Why distraction is the new addiction. The restless mind. Most people don't think of themselves as addicted. They don't crave substances. They don't feel out of control. They don't hit rock bottom. But they do feel something else. They feel restless, unsettled, unable to stay still for very long. Silence feels uncomfortable now. Waiting feels unbearable. Moments without stimulation. Feeling empty instead of peaceful. So, people reach for something. Anything. Anything at all. A screen. A notification. Noise. Movement. Not because they want pleasure, but because they want relief. Relief from boredom. Relief from unease. Relief from thoughts that surface when nothing is competing for attention. This is the part few people say out loud. Distraction isn't entertainment anymore. It is medication. It soothes discomfort. It dulls anxiety. It keeps difficult feelings just far enough away to remain manageable. That is why stillness feels threatening. Because when distraction stops, something else arrives. Unfinished thoughts, unprocessed emotion, questions people have been avoiding, regrets, grief, fear. Distraction keeps those things from fully forming. And over time, the mind learns a pattern. When discomfort appears, escape immediately. When silence arrives, fill it. When attention wavers, stimulate it. This pattern feels normal now, even healthy, but the cost is subtle. The mind loses its tolerance for stillness. The nervous system stays activated. Rest stops restoring. Presence stops feeling natural. People say they are tired, even when they haven't worked hard. They say they are burned out, even when they have been distracted all day. That's because distraction is exhausting. It keeps the mind busy without letting it settle. It consumes attention without replenishing meaning. This is why many people feel uneasy when there is nothing to do. Not relaxed, uneasy, as if something is missing, as if something is wrong. This episode is not about blaming. It is about noticing. Because once you see how distraction functions in your life, you can begin to understand why it has so much power and why letting go of it feels harder than most people expect. Distraction as relief, not entertainment. Most people think distraction is something they choose, a way to pass time, a break, something optional. But for many people now, distraction is automatic. It happens before thought, before decision, before awareness. The hand reaches. The screen lights up. The noise begins. Not because people are bored, but because something inside them is trying to regulate discomfort. Distraction works because it interrupts feeling. It breaks emotional continuity. Whatever was beginning to surface gets pushed aside. That interruption brings relief, immediate relief, and the nervous system remembers that. Relief becomes the signal, not enjoyment, not interest. Relief. This is why people don't ask whether they want distraction. They feel a pull, a compulsion, a reflex. And this reflex forms quietly. Each time discomfort is interrupted, the brain learns. This works. Each time silence is avoided, the system relaxes just enough to feel better. Over time, the threshold for discomfort drops. Smaller feelings trigger the same response, mild unease. Brief boredom, monetary sadness, all get treated the same way. Escape. This is how distraction becomes necessary, not because life is unbearable, but because tolerance disappears. The mind becomes trained to avoid staying with anything difficult, even briefly, even safely, even when nothing is actually wrong. This changes emotional life. Feelings don't get processed. They get bypassed. Thoughts don't develop. They get interrupted. Questions don't resolve. They get postponed indefinitely. And what is postponed doesn't disappear. It accumulates. Unfinished emotion builds pressure. Unfinished thought creates anxiety. Unfinished grief creates numbness. So the need for relief increases. And distraction delivers it again. Briefly, at a cost. This is why people say they feel busy but empty, occupied but unsatisfied, stimulated but restless. Distraction provides movement without meaning, activity without resolution, noise without nourishment. And yet, it feels necessary because the alternative feels worse. Silence, stillness, the return of thoughts that were never finished, the return of feelings that were never allowed to speak. This is why people defend their distractions, not intellectually, emotionally. When distraction is questioned, it feels like a threat, like something protective is being taken away. And in a sense, it is, because distraction has been doing a job, regulating emotion, containing anxiety, managing overload. The problem is not that distraction works. The problem is what it replaces. It replaces processing, reflection, integration, the slow work that turns experience into understanding. Without that work, life stays fragmented and people stay restless until they learn another way to handle discomfort. Distraction will remain their default relief. Why silence feels threatening? Silence used to mean rest. Now for many people, it means exposure. When everything goes quiet, there's nothing left to buffer experience. No noise to absorb attention. No movement to distract the mind. No interruption to break thought. So whatever has been waiting steps forward. Thoughts that were postponed, feelings that were muted, questions that never found answers. Silence doesn't create these things, it reveals them. That's why it feels threatening. Because it removes protection. Most people don't fear silence because they dislike quiet. They fear it because it confronts them with themselves, with how they are actually doing, with what they have been carrying, with what hasn't been resolved. Modern life rarely allows that confrontation. There is always something available to prevent it. Always a sound, always a screen, always a task. So the inner world stays unexamined, unintegrated, unsettled. Over time, the mind associates silence with danger. Not physical danger, emotional exposure. The feeling that something difficult might surface without warning. This is why people feel silence immediately. Music during every activity. Podcast during every walk. Noise before sleep. Screens before thought. It's not indulgence, it's avoidance. And avoidance becomes habit. The longer people avoid silence, the less capacity they have for it. The less familiar it feels. The more intense it becomes. So silence starts to feel overwhelming, even in small doses. A quiet room feels tense. A still moment feels awkward. Being alone with one's thoughts feels unsettling. This isn't weakness, it's conditioning. When the nervous system is rarely allowed to downshift, it stays alert. Always scanning, always bracing. Silence removes stimulation, but it also removes distraction, so the mind rushes to fill it. Not because silence is harmful, but because what is underneath feels unfinished. And unfinished things demand attention. This is why people say they don't like to think too much. It's not thinking they fear. It's what thinking might uncover. Unanswered questions, unacknowledged sadness, unlived desires, unspoken grief. Silence doesn't invent these. It makes room for them, and making room feels risky. When life has taught people to keep moving, to stay productive, to avoid slowing down, because slowing down might reveal that something is wrong, or something is missing, or unresolved. This is why silence now feels like a loss of control. When distraction stops, control shifts inward. And that's unfamiliar territory. So people flee it again and again until silence becomes foreign, until stillness feels unsafe, until rest stops restoring. This is the hidden cost of constant stimulation, not exhaustion, avoidance. Avoidance of the inner life, avoidance of truth, avoidance of integration. And the more silence is avoided, the louder it becomes. When it finally arrives, which only reinforces the habit of escape. This is why I'm telling you, relearning silence is not easy. It requires patience, gentleness, and the willingness to stay with discomfort long enough for it to soften, until silence stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a place you can rest again. The cost of constant escape. Distraction feels harmless because it offers relief, but relief is not neutral. It always comes with a trade. When escape becomes constant, something else quietly weakens. Attention thins, memory fragments, meaning dissolves. This doesn't happen dramatically. It happens slowly, almost invisibly. The first cost is attention. Attention is not infinite. It's a muscle, and muscles weaken. And when they're never held in place, when attention is always pulled away before it settles, it loses endurance. People struggle to stay with tasks. They read without absorbing. They listen without hearing. They begin many things and finish very few. This isn't at all laziness. It's fragmentation. The second cost is memory. Memory forms through presence, through staying with experience long enough for it to consolidate. When experience is constantly interrupted, memory doesn't bind. Days blur, weeks disappear, life feels fast because nothing is anchored. People say time is flying. What they mean is nothing is sticking. The third cost is emotional depth. Feelings require space. They need time to rise, be felt, and resolve. Constant escape cuts that process short. Emotions don't complete, they flatten. Joy feels muted. Sadness feels distant. Anger spikes suddenly and fades without understanding. This creates emotional confusion. People don't trust their feelings because they don't know where they come from. The fourth cost is meaning. Meaning emerges from coherence, from seeing how experiences connect, from effort leading somewhere, from continuity over time. Distraction breaks continuity. Life becomes a series of unrelated moments. Busy but hollow. Active but unsatisfying. People say they are doing a lot but feel empty. This is why movement has replaced direction. Stimulation has replaced substance. The fifth cost is tolerance for reality. When escape is always available, reality feels demanding. Ordinary moments feel dull. Stillness feels heavy. Depth feels slow. People become impatient with anything that doesn't provide immediate relief. This impatience spills everywhere. Relationships, work, conversation. People want quick resolution to complex things. Fast comfort for deep discomfort. But reality doesn't work that way. And when reality doesn't cooperate, people escape again. This cycle reinforces itself. The more people escape, the harder it becomes to stay. The harder it becomes to stay, the more necessary escape feels. This is why constant distraction leaves people exhausted. Not because they're doing too much, but because nothing is replenishing them. Attention is spent. Emotion is bypassed. Meaning is deferred. Rest no longer restores because rest has been replaced by stimulation. And stimulation is not rest. It is effort in disguise. This is the hidden cost. Not that people are entertained, but that they are never fully present long enough to be nourished. Until this changes, people will keep escaping. Not because they want to avoid life, but because life has stopped feeling inhabitable without constant relief. Why people defend their distractions? When people hear that distraction might be a problem, many react immediately. They push back. They minimize. They joke. They say things like, everyone needs a break. Or, it's not that serious. Or, life is stressful. What's the alternative? This reaction is not intellectual. It's emotional. Because distraction isn't just a habit. It's a coping mechanism. For many people, distraction is doing important work. It's keeping anxiety manageable. It's holding grief at bay. It's preventing overwhelm. So when distraction is questioned, it can feel like an attack on something protective. Not because people love distraction, but because they rely on it. Defensiveness often appears when something essential is being threatened. This is why conversations about distraction turn personal so quickly. People feel exposed, as if something is pointing out a vulnerability they depend on. And when people feel exposed, they defend. Not with arguments, with emotion. They dismiss, they rationalize, they change the subject immediately. This does not mean the observation is wrong. It means it landed. Distraction has become one of the primary ways people regulate themselves. Take it away abruptly and something else floods in. Anxiety, restlessness, uncertainty. So the mind resists. It says, don't touch this. Don't look here. Don't take this away. This is not weakness. It's adaptation. When life feels overwhelming, people build coping structures. Distraction is one of the most accessible. It's immediate. It's socially accepted. It doesn't require explanation. And unlike substances, it is praised. Busy looks productive. Connected looks engaged. Occupied looks responsible. So people rarely question it. Real change only begins when the underlying need is addressed. When people find another way to regulate emotion, to process thought, to handle discomfort without constant escape. Until then, defensiveness will remain, not because people are dishonest, but because they are protecting something that feels necessary for survival. Understanding this changes the tone of the conversation. It replaces judgment with clarity, and clarity creates space for something better to take its place. Relearning presence without extremes. When people realize how much they rely on distraction, they often imagine only two options: total escape or total control. Either constant stimulation or rigid self-denial. Neither works. Extreme withdrawal creates anxiety. Rigid control creates rebellion. Presence is rebuilt, not through force, but through tolerance. The ability to stay with mild discomfort without immediately escaping. That tolerance grows slowly. It is trained, not imposed. The first step is shortening the gap between impulse and action. Not eliminating distraction, but noticing it. Feeling the urge to reach. Pausing for a moment. Asking, what am I avoiding right now? That single question changes the relationship. It brings total awareness where reflex used to be. The second step is choosing small moments of unbroken presence. Not hours, minutes. Eating one meal without stimulation. Walking without noise. Sitting quietly before sleep. These moments teach the nervous system that stillness is survivable. That nothing catastrophic happens when distraction pauses. The third step is allowing feelings to finish their cycle. Not solving them, not analyzing them, letting them rise, be felt, and pass. Most feelings lose intensity when they are not resisted. Distraction interrupts all of this. Presence completes it. The fourth step is restoring rhythm. Predictable routines, regular sleep, consistent meals. Focused work blocks. Rhythm reduces the need for constant relief because the nervous system feels held. The fifth step is replacing distraction with something grounding. Not more stimulation, something embodied. Movement, craft, manual work, time with others without performance. Grounding activities, Anchor attention in the body instead of scattering it. This process is not at all dramatic. There are no breakthroughs, no sudden clarity, just gradual steadiness. Moments of rest begin to restore again. Attention holds longer. Silence feels less threatening. Life begins to feel more inhabitable. Presence is not intensity, it is availability. The willingness to remain with experience as it is, without needing to escape immediately. This is not about austere or rejecting enjoyment. It is about rebuilding the capacity to be here. Because, let's face it, without that capacity, no amount of stimulation will ever at all feel like enough. Relearning presence is quiet work, private work, but it changes everything. Because when presence returns, life stops feeling like something you have to flee from. What happens when you stay? When you stop escaping, nothing dramatic happens. The world doesn't suddenly make sense. Life doesn't become easy. What happens is quieter. You begin to stay. You stay with boredom long enough for it to pass. You stay with discomfort long enough to realize it isn't dangerous. You stay with a thought until it finishes. You stay with a feeling until it softens. And slowly something changes. Attention settles. Moments gain weight. Time feels less frantic. You begin to notice where you are while you are there. Staying does not remove pain, but it prevents pain from scattering. It allows experience to complete itself. This is how meaning returns. Not through excitement, not through stimulation, not through presence. When you stay, life stops feeling like something you have to manage constantly. It becomes something you can inhabit. And inhabiting life is different from escaping it. It feels slower, heavier, more demanding, but also more real. Distraction promises relief. Staying offers grounding. Relief fades quickly. Grounding lasts. This is the difference. You don't need to reject the world. You don't need to withdraw from life. You only need to stop running from every quiet moment. Because in those moments, something essential waits. And when you finally stay long enough to meet it, it begins to feel inhabitable again. Thank you. Transforming people's lives. The Kingdom Sanctuary of Eden and Outreach Ministries. With our clothing bins all over, we're collecting clothes and shoes and giving it out to all in the communities, in the cities, and all over the world. Wherever there is a need, the Kingdom Sanctuary of Eden is there to fulfill it. Please continue all your donations, whether it be clothes, food, shoes, or monetary donations, so we can take care of God's people all over the world. The donation starts with you. Let's build the kingdom together.